The rain pelted against the viewport of Adnan's small cargo hauler as he docked at Station Kepler 442. Another routine supply run to the outer rim. Another day of hauling medical supplies and ration packs to colonies that the core worlds had forgotten. He'd been doing this for 3 years now, ever since the war ended and veterans like him were deemed surplus to requirements. As Adnan secured his ship and prepared to head to the station's cantina, something caught his eye. Huddled between 2 massive cargo containers, barely visible in the shadows, was a small figure. At first glance, he thought it might be a human child, but the pale blue skin and the way her large, dark eyes reflected the station's artificial lighting told him otherwise. She was Zephyrian, one of the species that had allied with humanity during the Void War. But what was a Zephyrian child doing alone on a backwater station like this? Adnan approached slowly, his military training making him cautious, but his conscience refusing to let him walk away. The girl looked up at him with those enormous eyes, and he could see fear mixed with desperate hope. "Please," she whispered in accented standard, her voice barely audible above the station's ambient noise. "Don't send me away. I promise I'll be good." Adnan knelt down to her level, noting how thin she was, how her clothes, clearly expensive ones, were now torn and dirty. "What's your name, little one?" "Nehal," she replied, wrapping her arms around her knees. "My stepmother, she said humans eat alien children. She said you would hurt me if I came near you, but you're the only one who stopped." The words hit Adnan like a plasma blast to the chest. He'd heard the stories, the propaganda that some alien faction spread about humans. Most of it was born from fear and misunderstanding, but it still stung to hear it from a child. "Where is your stepmother now?" he asked gently. Nihal's expression crumpled. "She left me here. Said I was too much trouble, that my father should never have bonded with a human sympathizer. She took my half-siblings back to Zephyr Prime and told me to find my own way." Adnan felt anger surge through him, not at the child but at the adults who had failed her. He'd seen too much abandonment during the war, too many families torn apart by conflict and prejudice. But this was just cruelty. "When did you last eat?" he asked. 2 days ago. A Centaurian merchant gave me half a nutrition bar, but then station security chased me away from his stall." Without hesitation, Adnan stood and extended his hand. "Come on, let's get you some food." Nahal stared at his outstretched hand as if it were the most alien thing on the station. You're not going to hurt me?" "The only thing I'm going to hurt is my credit account buying you a decent meal," Adnan said with a slight smile. "That is, if you trust me enough to come with me." Tentatively, Nehal reached out and took his hand. Her 3-fingered grip was small and cold, but she held on tightly as he led her through the station corridors toward the cantina. The other patrons, a mix of humans, Centaurians, and a few other species, barely glanced at them as they found a corner booth. Adnan ordered enough food for 3 people and watched as Nehal ate with the desperate efficiency of someone who hadn't known where their next meal would come from. "Tell me about your father," Adnan said as she worked on her second helping of synthesized protein. Nehal's eyes brightened for the first time since he'd found her. "He was a cultural exchange officer. He worked to build bridges between our peoples after the war. He said humans and Zephyrians were natural allies because both species refuse to give up when things get difficult. He sounds like a good man." "What happened to him?" "Mining accident on Kepler 186b. He was helping establish the joint colony there." Her voice grew small again. "After he died, my stepmother said she couldn't stand to look at me anymore because I reminded her too much of his human obsession." Adnan had made his decision somewhere between the second course and dessert, but he waited until Nehal had finished eating before speaking. "I have a proposition for you, Nehal," he said, leaning forward. "I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not father material. I'm a cargo hauler who lives in a ship that's probably older than both of us combined. I've got debts, a bad reputation with some station authorities, and I snore loud enough to wake the dead." Nehal listened intently, her large eyes never leaving his face. "But," he continued, "I've got plenty of room on my ship, steady work that takes me all over the galaxy, and I could use a co-pilot who's smart enough to learn the trade. The pay is decent, the company is better than most, and I promise you'll never go hungry again. You want me to stay with you?" Nehal's voice was barely a whisper. "Only if you want to. No pressure, no obligations, but if you're willing to work hard and learn fast." I'm willing to teach you everything I know about flying, trading, and surviving out here in the black. Tears began flowing down Nihal's cheeks, tears that glowed faintly blue in the cantina's dim lighting. Please, she said, echoing her words from earlier but with entirely different meaning now. Be my dad. I won't misbehave. I'll learn everything. I'll work hard, I promise. Adnan reached across the table and gently squeezed her small hand. You don't have to promise to be perfect, Nihal. You just have to promise to be yourself. That's all any good parent should ask for. As they walked back toward the docking bay together, Adnan realized that for the first time since the war ended, he had a real purpose again. Not just hauling cargo from point A to point B, but building something meaningful, a family. And if anyone had a problem with a human raising a Zephyrian child, they'd have to go through him first, behind them. Other station dwellers watched the unlikely pair disappear into the maze of corridors. Some shook their heads in disapproval, others smiled knowingly. But Adnan and Nihal didn't notice any of them. They were too busy planning their future among the stars. 6 months later, Nihal had not only mastered the basics of cargo hauling, but had also improved Adnan's routes by 15%. When asked by a curious station manager why he'd taken in an alien child, Adnan simply replied, "Because that's what humans do. We don't abandon our own, and anyone who needs help becomes one of our own." It was perhaps the most human answer he could have given.